Hey everybody, it's your boy, Jeremy here to do another one of my streams. You can tell I got a haircut, looking spiffy here, if I do say so myself. Um, Still got a bunch of tabs open, multitasking, but what are you going to do, right? I am here to chat about some things that are very valuable to me, some questions that I think are absolutely great. So excuse me while I minimize that tab here. I'm looking at the vagus nerve, which is the largest cranial nerve, the 10th cranial nerve. Runs throughout the body, determines fight or flight stuff. It puts the brake on the fight or flight response. It's big. It's a key element in therapy now, but we're not going to go down that rabbit hole right now. I'm going to do a whole video. I might even do a course on it, dependent on the interest level. So let's talk here. I might be a little ahead of myself. What we're going to do is we are going to take some of these, and this is an interesting one. I'm going to go back up a little bit here, though. We're going to talk about why am I like this and how can I change our / therapy here. So we're going to go through this and talk about it a little bit. Let's read it all here together. I really struggle to be happy for my boyfriend when he's out doing his own thing or hanging out with his friends or family. I get mad or anxious when he does, resulting in us arguing. When he is doing what he wants, I send him texts to make him feel as bad as I feel. Okay, so that's already very relevant, because what that signifies here is that there is a tendency to want to project the emotional state there onto the other party. Now, that's often what clients do with therapists, is they start to transfer that emotion over. And the therapist, like if someone's having a meltdown, so to speak, like an emotional episode, then the therapist will actually start to feel much like the client, and that sort of sense of anxiety and that sense of dread. And so the therapist leaves feeling kind of like they've been hit, or having the emotion projected onto them that the client feels. So that's normal projection, okay? As you project onto the other, and you accuse them of feeling a certain way. It's like, are you mad? Are you mad? Are you mad? And someone by the end of it's mad, and so you've made them mad, and then you can say, aha, you are, okay? So what's going on here is a variation of that called projective identification, where the projection isn't clean. The person is feeling that sense of, like, they're still angry, right? But now they want the other person to hurt, and they're still hurting. And so projective identification is a very interesting defense mechanism, because it's not helpful. It doesn't get rid of the emotion completely, and you just end up running people away. So this is some behavior that comes from being unable to hold one's own emotions, right? Being unable to take them and diffuse them without making someone else experience it with you. So this is something that runs people off and alienates them very easily, and it's akin to much of the kind of issues that people have with borderline personality disorder. So see, I'm being very careful here, because therapists cannot diagnose people without meeting them or assessing them. So I want you to remember that as a big takeaway, that therapists cannot diagnose without meeting and assessing, okay? People will try to do that. They'll try to say that popular TV characters have this or that other thing, and that's cute. And if it's a fiction character, well, then that's fine, right? But if it's a real life person, then what we have is a kind of hazardous thing to do, and I'm not going to get too much into that. But what I am going to get into is, I'm reading these symptoms and I'm looking at it like I would, like the vignettes. As therapists, we learn to analyze these vignettes, we call them, okay? These little stories that are about this big, really, maybe more, and we kind of are asked, well, what would you diagnose this person with? So you can do something similar, but it's very literary in nature like this. So what I'm seeing is this emotional immaturity of believing that someone has to feel something, that it's unfair for someone to be happy when you're sad, so that someone that you care about, if they cared about you, they would be sad too. Now here's the problem. If you go to a therapist, your therapist cannot be engulfed by your emotions because they'll be ineffective. Your therapist is in the trenches with you, but whereas you may be in shell shock or PTSD, to use the modern term, which I use on, but we used to call it shell shock back before I was even born. I don't know why I'm saying we, but your therapist in the trenches with you in the war against your trauma cannot be engulfed by it and panicked by it as you may be. So you cannot expect people in your life to always be panicked and feel as badly as you do about whatever you're feeling. And that's a good thing, because they'll be able to think logically and help you through it. Or just listen and bear witness and hold that space for you, to use a very cliche therapy term, while you're upset. So there's a fundamental misunderstanding of the role of the significant other here, to like as if it needs to be someone that it takes from you on an emotional level and feels your pain. They can feel it with you, but they don't have to feel exactly as you do. So wanting them to inflict that pain, there's an element here of replicating some past hurt. Like you want someone to understand just what you've been through, and maybe even looking at your partner as not deserving to be happy because you weren't happy at some point. There's a lot here. Like if you want someone to feel bad because you do, there's so much pathological content there that we can unpack without knowing the person and why things started this way. I can't know that. But what I'm looking at here is, like, you go down here, let's continue reading it. I try to make him regret choosing to do what he wants. Again, very controlling stuff out of a sense of vulnerability and pain. If I don't get my way, I get anxious and irritable, okay? So here we go. That's the clinical target. You need to work on the anxiety and the irritability versus trying to control someone else and make them the same way. There's a very viral, sort of contagious trauma to that. It's a personality disorder thing. Personality disorders involve wanting to inflict your pain onto others, whereas depression may be, well, I'm sad and I don't want this anymore. A personality disorder is usually, well, I'm feeling this way and I'm right and everyone should feel this way. And so there's like a mimetic contagion where if you look at memes or ideas, people are transmitting them. They got them through trauma, like you're not good enough, and the only time you're worth anything is when you're upset or when you're giving me attention. And so that gets inflicted on someone. That person imbibes it, and if they get affected with it, it's a personality disorder. If they can get it pulled out, it's like PTSD, and you don't identify with it. It hasn't taken over your personality if it's PTSD or trauma, right? If it's taken over your personality, it's a personality disorder. So I use a lot of meme theory, meaning that ideas that live through us, right? So someone who's really negative and tries to crush your dreams, they have this idea that if anyone's happy, there's something wrong with that, or that they're worthless. And so that idea is acting through them, and they're trying to make other people feel miserable. And if someone does that to you, to depersonalize it, if someone's doing this kind of thing to you, like what our original poster here, our OP, is doing, you take it, you think, wow, what is that person going through inside? How dark is their mental framework? And why are they trying to transmit this way of thinking onto me? And that helps to melt away some of the why me personalization elements to it, which make you feel like something's wrong. And so just an FYI there, if you're on the receiving end of this, something horrible happened to this person, or they were taught something horrible, and it's like a zombie bite. Do you take it personally if a zombie tries to bite you? Well, no, you don't. But so do you take it personally if someone is in an acute state of pain and not thinking logically, trying to hurt you? Well, you shouldn't take it personally, because think of how much pain they're going through. So obviously I don't think people with personality disorders are zombies. I think that the metaphor goes to automatic life or death behavior. The metaphor goes to this transfer of something painful. That's where I'm going with this, clearly. I'm not passing judgment. People with BPD, borderline personality disorder, who want others to feel their pain, have usually been through an immense amount of pain and need empathy. A lot of it, right? So this person clearly, it gets anxious and irritable. I'm sure that's extremely painful, but that needs to be the clinical target, not making your significant other hurt like you do, right? That's going to drive people away, obviously. I just don't feel happy at all when he's having a good time doing anything that doesn't involve me. So there's an omnipotence there, a feeling that you need to be the one to give or to take away happiness. That there's a threatening nature there to that, right? Like your man off Saturday nights for the boys, right? Like, how are the boys giving him what you do? Hopefully not. There would be some boundary issues there, clearly. And if you're not open to polyamory, then that doesn't work. But you've got some severe issues there where it comes to equating like any happiness with you, that you need to be the everything. And so there's a narcissistic thread there, probably fragile narcissism, because you get irritable and anxious when he's away, right? So, but that's not, I'm not diagnosing that. I'm saying there's some tendencies, very different. I don't feel happy at all when he's having a good time. Okay, I feel extremely sad and anxious, and I just can't handle it. So that language is very disempowering, okay? And you're not giving yourself enough credit. You can handle it. You can develop your own friendships. You can do your own stuff. Get out there, make some friends, make life happen, right? That's kind of the way I would say to go with this stuff, is get a therapist who specializes in dialectical behavior therapy, DBT, a therapy which focuses on emotion regulation and teaching people how to overcome these sense of powerlessness and this inability to handle one's own severe emotions, like increased heart rate. You can handle that. You breathe slower and you counteract it, right? You view that as the target. You disidentify. Okay, this is what I'm talking about being taken over by ideas. That idea that if he's out having fun, that's the problem. No, the problem is the separation anxiety. That's the problem. That's what to target. That's what to look at and say, okay, I got to slow down my breathing, recognize he's out, move my eyes around, fill my mind with something else, give it some incoming data that distracts it, that pulls it out of this loop of anxiety and taking his happiness as a threat. Okay, I don't want to be like this. I realize I'm wrong, and I'm not treating him right, but in the moment it just takes over and I can't stop it. Again, there's so much disempowering language here. There's so much to this that's the I can't, right? There's this element to it that's extremely deceiving. It's you haven't been able to so far. Okay? Let's change the way we phrase that, because if we view it as something that can't be changed, like that's just me, which by the way society does that a lot, we really cheapen our own agency and diligence and ability to do things. So I'm not treating him right in the moment. Blah, blah, blah. I can't literally sit there for hours spamming with text. I can literally, okay, just to get his attention. So what is that? Like, that's again very borderline personality disorder, fear of abandonment, right? That's a key element of BPD, is fear of abandonment. It's huge. It's one of the biggest symptoms of this disorder. And again, I'm not diagnosing this person. I'm saying this is lining up that way, right? It's indicating, it's foreshadowing it to be literary. So I realize I shouldn't have said any of it. Right. Okay, afterwards you realize you have an emotional hangover. It's like, I wish I hadn't said stuff. So you got to learn to ride the wave, right? To not take it as he's hurting you by going out with people. I just don't want to feel like this anymore. I don't want to be this selfish person who isn't even able to be happy for her own who isn't able to be happy for even her own BF. Okay. All right. So let's unpack this together, everybody, shall we? So I just did, essentially, but to bullet point it, there is help for this, and it involves addressing what we tell ourselves about emotions and taking the middle way, which is Buddhist, if you're taking notes, but also dialectical. So dialectical behavior therapy, DBT, teaches us that emotions do not have to control us, that we can honor them and show ourselves empathy, but not be completely consumed by our emotions and act on them, right? We don't have to either ignore them or act on them. We can do neither. We can notice them, breathe through them. If we're tensing up and getting upset and having to text, we unclench ourselves. We start over. We say, I'm going to notice these emotions. I'm feeling blank. I'm thinking blank, rather than identifying with it. My boyfriend's having fun and hates me. I'm not good enough for him. No, I'm thinking right now that my boyfriend hates me. I'm not good enough for him. You see the difference. The difference is looking at this and distancing yourself from your cognitions. They are not law. They are not gospel truth. Okay, just to put a pin on it there. And so that's the cognitive level. But the emotional and behavioral levels, the behaviors, you set your phone down, make some new friends, go to a group, digitally go to a Zoom group for dialectical behavior therapy. Do something that allows you some space for you so that when he's out with his friends, you can distract yourself. That's a key element. You've got to wrap that behavior up. You act differently to feel differently. You don't just have to feel differently to act differently, right? We get confused on that. So behavioral activation therapy tells us that we can activate a new mood through our behavior from a bottom-up approach of I'm going to do and change my emotions, and I'm going to think better. Top, okay? So there's a lot to unpack there. I would say get EMDR for whatever. So EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing, views different traumatic episodes in people's lives as targets. And so you view a target, and you say, okay, now that's what this is. I remember that when somebody was off away from me, that meant they were never coming back. Now I'm going to desensitize that memory through eye movement, which you do with the therapist. You don't do this on your own. You're going to desensitize that, and you're going to take it and you're going to get over that through your brain recognizing, wait a minute, I'm in the present, I'm moving my eyes, I'm thinking it's memory. It taxes that emotion, that cognitive bandwidth. You're not going to be able to fully relive that memory, and it's going to be encoded as less and less vivid. That's how EMDR works. It's a working memory hack, okay? But it's got a lot of elements to it that are very distinctive and proprietary that enable it to work very thoroughly. So I'm a big proponent. I do EMDR. It's a big thing. So that is what I want to go over today, is if you're feeling attachment anxiety. So early childhood attachment causes this sort of lack of ability to be happy for your loved one and this sort of wrathful, vengeful spirit here. Okay? So that's our first little video here. I'm going to stop. I'm going to chunk this into its own little vignette here and start addressing these questions one at a time, because I think that's a much better way to address therapeutic concepts. So you can watch a chunk at a time from Fox Therapy here, from your boy Jeremy. You can listen to this on the road. Well, if it's in podcast form, don't drive and watch, right? Background. But yeah, I'm going to sign off on this one. I'm going to make another one shortly. So just be aware, whatever's going on emotionally, like early childhood attachment trauma, causes us to have some inability to understand emotions related to abandonment. We take time away as abandonment, right? Because we might have been taught that lesson, that if someone's away from you, they're never coming back. And your conscious brain knows that it's not true, but your emotional brain doesn't. That's where EMDR and trauma work, and working through it and talking to your boyfriend and realizing, wait a minute, he's gone, but not forever. Consciously telling yourself that when he's gone, if he's game, then having him go away for shorter amounts of time than extending it, like experimenting with this and retraining your brain is the way forward. Okay? I'm just going to be totally blunt on that. Like, you have to be able to take emotional distance. It doesn't mean that he's gone forever. And also, mentalization is something you're going to want to look into. Mentalization is the ability to judge people's emotional states accurately from their outward behavior. So if people taught you, and we gain it from learning how to relate to our own emotions from a caregiver. So if a parent taught you that anger is something you have to give into, well, then you're going to, whenever you see anger, you're going to think something inevitable is going to happen. You're going to think, oh no, I'm going to be hurt, because your narrative around anger did not develop in a way that serves you rationally. You're taught you can't handle your own anger, and that you have to express it, that you can't go do something else with it. That anger is something you always heed. Okay? So again, early caregivers can teach us to fear our emotions, and that we have to go to the hospital if we're having depression. Like, we can't talk ourselves out of it. Now, of course, if you're in an acute psychiatric emergency, you're going to go to the hospital. But I've had conversations with people and discovered that they were taught that emotion, like if parents act with fear to kids' emotions, kids learn that their emotions are uncontrollable, right? And this is at a very early childhood stage. And so that's poor mentalization. It's a poor capacity to notice and hold one's own emotions. So hold on to that. More coming. Thank you for tuning in.